Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Game Break, an ongoing series where me and my crew take a break from our creative endeavors and play some video games and experience other people's creative endeavors. I am Charles, coming to you today with another episode of World and Economica. Now, last time round, Hal and Hagana went on a shopping spree, and we got to see Hagana's ridiculous bargaining skills. I was not expecting that. And we ended on a bit of a downer in that Hal managed to flub up his dialogue with Hagana to the point where she ran away crying. And I am kind of curious as to why. So let's dive right back in and see just what is going on. She was crying, but I had no idea why. What the heck? Why did I have to get kicked in the shins, and why was she the one crying? Bearing the pain and the confusion, I somehow managed to get up and fix my bag on my back. It was then that I noticed. There were mule bills scattered all over the corridor. It was the 41 mules I shoved in her bag. I sighed while picking up the crumpled bills and stuffing them back in my pocket. Just how bad was her childhood or previous history that giving her basically two 20s and a 1 and saying, hey, it's no big deal, I can afford it, is going to do that? What the heck just happened? My shins were in pain and the sun was setting. Around the time I returned to church, it had already gotten dark, and the streets and fronts of buildings were lined with chairs and tables. For the people clad in worn-out day laborers' clothing who were enjoying a drink, having a light meal, or having a chat with each other, it was a small way to draw some enjoyment out of the evening. For someone like me, who had not a shred of interest in the revelry, all I could think was that it was a hindrance to my usual strolls through town. My leg also hurt, so I had finally gotten back with more than a little difficulty. That took you a while. The church door had been bolted shut, so I pressed the intercom and had Lisa let me in. After opening the door, Lisa had a bewildered and shocked expression on her face, as if something very strange had happened. As I entered the spacious and empty church, the door behind me closed. So, why did you make Hagana cry? Lisa sighed as she asked me that question. Just as I had finally gotten back, to be questioned just like that was enough to make me want to start crying too. Like hell I'd know. Huh? Are you hurt? Of course. Jeez. This is what happened after she lashed out and kicked me in the shins out of nowhere. Looking at my leg, Lisa said nothing as she touched her own shin. Look, I have no time to be angry about it. I had no idea what happened there, and it wasn't like you could do anything once she started crying. What the hell was that? And on top of that, as soon as I get back, I get pegged as the culprit? Because you were. I mean, because I don't know enough about her history, I don't know why that triggered the reaction it did, but no, it's your fault. Sorry, don't be upset. As I kept talking, Lisa tried to alleviate the situation. She placed her hands on my shoulders and apologized sincerely. I tried to shake her off, but Lisa nevertheless held tight and looked at me silently. She was rather good at that stance. Staying mad had started feeling silly, so I sat down on the couch. But even you would be at first concerned about her if a girl started crying, though. Right, Hal? As irritating as it was, Lisa's reasoning was sound, so all I could do was nod in agreement. Besides, I don't know what's going on either. I had totally thought you two would be coming home all friendly and such. Huh? At my rather displeased response, Lisa was taken aback. Calm down. She then put the palms of her hands together and looked to me. But Hagana didn't thank you? A dubious look crossed my face at Lisa's words, and the crease in my brow looked like it was going to twist itself. Huh? Thanks? There's no way she would have done that. And for what, anyway? Huh. Hey, what happened? Lisa also had a dubious look on her face as she asked. I sighed and answered her back. I don't know. When we went clothing shopping, Hagana really laid down the hammer, haggling the price down, and when I was going to pay full price for my share, she insisted on giving me back the difference of the haggled price. But I didn't really do anything to deserve it. I said I didn't want the money after her unbelievable haggling. And then she kicked me in the shins. Just saying that made me remember how unreasonable it was. That's not exactly how it was phrased on both sides. I'm still siding with Hagana on this one. Besides, telling Lisa what I remembered was weird enough. I was against going into any more detail on the matter. Nevertheless, it seemed that just listening to me was giving Lisa a headache as she rubbed her temples. Then she sat in a chair facing me, leaning back, and spoke. I didn't really take into consideration her awkwardness. Huh? Lisa sighed deeply and raised her head. It was I who told her to haggle while going shopping with you. Again, huh? She is really good at that sort of thing, but I see, of all things that happened... Wait, I don't understand what you mean. Sorry, I'll start from the beginning. After saying that, she looked behind her as if she had noticed something. Then she got up, opened the door to the main part of the building, and surveyed the other side. After that, she closed the door quietly, came back, and started talking. Well, remember what happened when Toyama came here? Yeah. Toyama was probably really angry, right? Yeah, that was really something. He has a daughter that is about Hagana's age, but they don't really get along. On the moon, moneylenders are also looked at disdainfully. Probably because of that, they stopped talking to each other. Wow, that's unfortunate. It's true, despite what he does, he really is a good person. So I wouldn't have been surprised if he had actually hit her. But you came in, took care of the interest payment, and saved the day, didn't you? Oh no. And besides, Hagana wanted to hide that from me, and you did end up going along with her plan. Oh no. After that, I then asked Hagana, did you thank him properly? Oh no. That's certainly what Lisa would say, and I imagined Hagana's reaction. You're probably imagining it exactly right. I guess so. But it was true that you helped her out there, and I told her to properly thank you. Okay then, what about all that haggling? Yes, she's rather good at it after all. I told her to thank you by haggling over prices since she probably didn't have any more money left. That's why, well, you may not like the idea of it, but Hagana was probably in high spirits about it. Lisa's seemingly apologetic words were in actuality swirling around in my mind. It was true that Hagana's way of haggling was strange despite her harsh personality. If she always haggled that way, someone like Lisa would have warned her by now. No, well, it really was pretty bad. I wouldn't be able to go back to that shop. That bad? Jeez. Lisa put her hand over her forehead, perhaps wondering what else could be done. On top of that, though she was the one haggling, without saying another word, she just handed me the difference. Certainly, anyone would refuse it. You're right. You weren't in the wrong. If anyone was wrong, it would be me. Wait, what? You didn't do no wrong. Really, you're gonna phrase it that way? I said that hurriedly, and I could see a tired smile under her hand. Thank you, but, woman? It, wasn't your fault, Lisa. Okay, thank you. Lisa nodded her head and smiled, but I felt like I was getting a headache. I had no idea as to what I should do. In order to thank me, Hagana used those high-handed haggling tactics. On top of that, she had thought that I was out of money and pushed the savings all onto me. Part of me wanted to say that if it was just a few mools, then it would have been better just to pay it up. No matter how you looked at it, it was an unlucky incident. There was no other way to say it. It would be strange for me to ask you to apologize to Hagana after all. I'm the victim here after all. I'm pretty bad when it comes to this kind of thing, though. Lisa probably gave advice to Hagana out of morality and the kindness of her heart, but those attempts completely backfired. However, I'd feel kind of sorry even if Lisa felt bummed out about it. Well, time will mend things. You don't hate her after all, right? Lisa looked directly at me and said that. Whether I disliked her or not, the only answer was to say no, I suppose. Or should I say, regardless of what I would say, she did talk a bit about her hometown, and about the smiles on her students' faces, so certainly she understood a thing or two about human emotions. Besides, this time it was an unfortunate turn of events due to Hagana's awkwardness, so there wasn't really a reason for me to feel resentful. I suppose not. Thank you. You ain't the one to be doing the thanking. Jeez, you really are foul-mouthed, aren't you? Well, he didn't swear in that one, but, yeah. Lisa laughed sarcastically as she stood up from her chair. But, well, that was it. Ah. Well, why don't we get some food? You're hungry, right? Lisa smiled as she extended a hand towards me. I took her hand and stood up. What I felt in my mind was like the mental equivalent of a bad aftertaste. And I felt disappointment, as it would be pointless to propose the idea of financial engineering to Hagana. That night, with the registration deadline looming, I signed up for the investment contest. Even on my own, I should have a chance at it. As I thought about how I didn't necessarily have complete confidence in myself, I soon fell asleep. The third investment contest, sponsored by the Ratzinger Economics Research Center. The investment contest took place in a virtual world, but the securities market prepared for the event was practically no different from the actual one. There were companies, balance sheets, dividends, and from time to time unforeseen incidents, mergers, and even bankruptcies. The only links to reality were the exchange rates, interbank interest rates, the various energy markets, and the lunar clock. The contest ran for half a year, with a total of 100,000 participants. At any one time, roughly 20,000 out of them would be conducting trades at their own pace. Each person starts with 10 million virtual mools and can trade for a total of 40 days. To qualify for the event, there was a system where contestants were selected one by one. God damn it. Sorry. To qualify for the event, there was a system where contestants were selected one by one, either by the Economics Research Center or by a supporting investment bank. And thus, many of the contestants invited in the early days of the contest had already finished their trading and had their performance evaluated. The performance results were broadcasted and updated in real time. Currently, the top-ranked participant, who went by the handle Mr. Trosh, managed to earn 45 million mools in 19 days of trading. Information from the Economics Research Center mentioned that many big-shot investment pros also participated for the fun. So it was rumored that Mr. Trosh might have been a top-of-the-league fund manager, or someone from the proprietary trading division in an investment bank. Oops. I missed something. Dang it. I guess you aren't willing to be careful. Did you get scalded? I took the napkin and wiped myself minimally and simply stared at the computer without wasting time putting the napkin back. How? Lisa's loud voice brought me back to reality. Did you get scalded? She laughed cheerfully as she looked at me. It was enough to get my heart pounding, as I had my hand on my chest when I realized that the napkin was still in my hands before I gave it back to Lisa. So, did you get scalded? No, I'm fine. No matter what you are doing, it can wait till after you finished eating. The clanking sound of tableware brought me once again back to reality from the screen of my computer. Knowing the waste of time it would have been to argue, I stuffed my face with what was left, then replied. Thank you for the food. Jeez. I could see her say that in disgust from the corner of my eye as I put down the tableware. The investment contest ran on lunar time and was open only during when the lunar stock exchange was open. In other words, were I to have put all my energy into this contest, I would no longer have time to do my actual trading. However, I only had 70,000 mools compared to the 200,000 that would go to the winner. And they even said that the top-ranked contestants would be headhunted by Schrödinger Street. If that were the case, then instead of losing money slowly like I'd been doing recently, trading virtual money and diving straight into the more rewarding contest was the right thing to do. Besides, looking around on the web, it seemed that the price fluctuations and behavior of stocks traded within the contest, although fictional, supposedly were no different from the stocks of actual companies. While I wasn't sure if this was the case, some kind person in their spare time did make and upload a table correlating the virtual stocks with real ones. Looking at the corresponding stock movements on a graph did make them look very similar. For now, I had downloaded the table and saved it. And without even taking my eyes off the screen as my hand searched for my coffee cup, I ended up knocking it with the backside of my hand. Will you stop that? While Lisa was being annoyed, I picked up the coffee cup and ducked my head down as I sipped it. Geez, that's right. Hagana. I would have returned my focus to the computer as usual, but somehow the mention of Hagana at the end of her sentence had caught me off guard. Despite my head being filled with all things concerning the investment contest, the events from yesterday came to mind again.
Today I need to help with the lecture at the university, so I won't be around. You better be sure to eat lunch, okay?
Hearing no response, I took a quick sidelong glance. I could see Hagana with her usual sour expression turn away and nibble at her bread.
I'm waiting for an answer.
Lisa's smile. Hagana had stopped munching on her bread and turned hesitantly toward Lisa. It appeared that whether there was a need to eat lunch or not was a point of contention with Lisa. But then again, when I would be immersed in trades, I would not have any time to eat lunch. Hagana was immersed within the understanding of the mathematical proof in her own way, so I could understand the reason to not be bothered. However, when Lisa was fine with that, or not, was an entirely different problem.
I will make lunch for you. You make sure to eat it, okay? Your answer...
Silence. Hagana said nothing once more, but it seemed that Lisa's smile persevered as Hagana gave in and finally said something.
Why only me?
Fair point. Though she didn't look at me, it was clear what she was implying. Naturally, Lisa understood immediately.
Just because Hal ends up not eating doesn't mean you get to do the same.
After bartering so forcefully at the clothing store, Hagana acted like a child in front of Lisa. As I thought about that, I was drifting around in the sea of the net absent-mindedly, but suddenly I realized that Lisa had turned towards me.
Well, Hal, are you going to remember to eat right?
Even though she hadn't bothered me while I was trading so, up until now, she somehow decided to choose today to do so. I looked at Lisa and confronted her smile. It was a smile in poor taste. Is this going to cost me extra? Flabbergasted, she sighed in response to my desperate reply.
Of course not. It's important for your growth to eat every day. If you don't, you won't get any taller.
Whatever. I wasn't that short for my age, but if I had to be honest, I'd say I was a bit on the smaller side. I groaned in response. Then Lisa turned towards Hagana again and appeared to whisper something into her ear. When she did that, Hagana appeared shocked and started to cower as if one of her secrets had been guessed. Then she looked downcast and bit down on her lip.
Are you fine with that?
Hagana looked conflicted when Lisa asked her that question, but soon enough she appeared to give in as she nodded her head. What the heck did she say, anyway? I was perplexed until Hagana looked up slightly. It was clear what she was looking at, so I was able to hit upon a theory. Or should I say, after looking awkwardly at Lisa's assets, I looked down at her chest. It appeared that she was rather concerned about her small size. Well, it was true that Lisa's chest was rather plentiful, and I suddenly realized that Lisa was looking at me as I had decided to take a gander myself. What?
What? You're all shaken up.
Lisa tilted her head slightly as she said that.
Well, with that said, the two of you better make sure to eat lunch. However, I also won't be happy if the both of you hide in your rooms and eat.
Oh, sneaky.
You two better eat here together, understand?
At Lisa's words, I now understood why today of all days she was so insistent about making sure we ate lunch. Though it wasn't all that unrealistic to shake hands and make peace, this was a rather forceful manner of assistance. Lisa, the embodiment of what both amazed and bothered me, then had the nerve to wink at me. It was true that when I came into the living room, Hagana did not even once look at me directly. It didn't particularly bother me either way, but that wasn't because of any childish stubbornness either. I looked back at Lisa and just shrugged my shoulders.
All right, so that's how it will be.
Lisa clapped her hands and cheerfully proceeded to start cleaning things up. I didn't know why she was so enthusiastic about it, but as I focused on my computer screen, I stole a glance at Hagana. As usual, Hagana had a sour look on her face and continued to chew on her bread as if I didn't exist. Transition. There weren't any additional restrictions in the rules for the investment contest. In addition to normal trading, buying on margin and short selling were also allowed. There was no daily restriction on the number of transactions, only a 0.1% transaction fee on the value of the stocks traded. The only special rule was that the participant only had 40 days of trading once they started. On top of that, after those 40 days were up, they wouldn't just close up all the positions and calculate the totals. It was simply that no more transactions could take place after that point. So if you held on to stocks, their values would continue to change. I wonder if this was done out of concern for people who made more long-term trades, as opposed to people like me who went for many short-term trades in a single day. And then, at the conclusion of the contest, the profits and loss would be calculated from the value of the stocks. In other words, if you were to carelessly hold on to random stocks, there would be little that could be done were they to slump in value afterwards. On the other hand, even if after 40 days one was not able to reach the top in terms of profits, there was always the hope that any retained stocks would be promising and bear fruit, thus rising in value afterwards. From the information grabbed from the official website when it opened to the public, it was clear that, much like the actual stock exchange, the virtual one had its share of good days and bad days for trading. There were days that had overall downward trends as well as those with overall upward trends. Observing how things were progressing at the start of the contest, it seemed like an easy-moving bull market. Looking on the net, most investors would time their start with when the markets were doing well overall, then go full throttle with trading for 40 days. Afterward, they placed all their bets on a few stocks that looked like they would go up and prayed that they did. However, my situation was a bit different. When I received an invitation, there were only 44 days left in the contest. I was probably one of the last to be invited, I'd imagine. I could see how it could have been a disadvantage, but it was actually an advantage since I could take in everything before making a move. Furthermore, unlike the real markets, it was hard to get a feel for the virtual markets in the early days of the contest. In their spare time, a bunch of kind contestants collected and published data about various aspects of the contest. Furthermore, there were contestants who'd chat amongst themselves. From their conversations, it appeared that there were many long-term investors in the early days of the contest, and more short-term traders were called to the contest in the latter half. I was a more extreme version of the latter, which may have been why I got called up at the last minute. Besides, for the most part, I didn't mind the feel of the market. When the whole market felt like it was down, I would look for stocks that had over-deprecated and pick them up at a discount. Then, either on that day or on the next day when everyone had calmed down, I would sell. If the market was on an upward trend, I'd just ride the wave. There were many methods when it came to trading, but I traded using the simplest of strategies. I had been doing ridiculously well just by employing that strategy. After complaining about how you've been losing money here and there on bad days. So this time around, I just had to keep going as I had been. Although I looked confident in my plans, I didn't feel like starting my trades right away. Doesn't look like it will work. I mumbled that to myself in front of my computer. Were I to begin trading, then my 40-day period would start. No ifs, ands, or buts. I didn't have time to hesitate, but I really was hesitant and couldn't bring myself to press the button to start trading. If this contest were exactly the same as the actual market, then proceeding as normal would have probably produced the same results. I heard the contest was not conducted annually, but rather on an irregular schedule. I also heard that this contest was part of an experiment to see if the real market could be reproduced. Since the beginning of time, there has yet to be someone who could unlock the secrets of the market. Even the greatest investors out there of infallible logic and reasoning, even Mr. Infallible himself, could still lose big. If the experiment were to succeed, it would be the equivalent of unlocking the secret to alchemy. Of course, investment banks and funds were a bit more realistic than that, and it seemed that they basically used this as a means to fish for talent. Even to an onlooker like me, it didn't look like the organizers were a monolithic entity. It appeared that the lunar government also had its hands in this, so perhaps there was some reason known only to grown-ups that the contest was held irregularly. In other words, it wasn't clear whether or not there would be another time. If that were the case, then there wouldn't be another chance to win the top prize and get scouted for Schrödinger Street. Thinking about that, I couldn't move carelessly. Failure was not an option. That was why I was monitoring the actual market and the virtual market at the same time. But what should I do at this late hour? I didn't feel like using the computer while sitting properly at the desk, so I placed it on the floor and sat cross-legged in front of it. I mumbled to myself as I sat cross-legged, then placed my hands behind my head before looking up and falling backwards. If I had a different method. While I looked at the ceiling, I went over what I knew about the various methods of trading. There were 3 main techniques when it came to trading stocks. Given that owning stock was basically owning a piece of the corporation, one technique focused on the basic principle that sound corporations would rise in value while bad ones would drop. Looking over the minute financial details of a corporation's performance and examining the products they manufactured before investing was a fundamental way of trading. The second technique was to ignore such fundamentals and focus solely on the price fluctuation of a stock to gain maximum profits. This was a trading method that relied heavily on plotted graphs of stock price changes on charts, utilizing that movement to make a trade. Analyzing the previous charts of countless companies, one could predict whether a stock would likely rise or fall given the curves. This was called technical analysis. The third technique was based on the assumption that stock movements were essentially random, and it was impossible to predict people's actions. There was apparently some statistical results stating that there wasn't much difference in performance between people sweating it out looking on companies' performances, staying up all night to analyze charts and choose stocks to trade, and monkeys throwing darts randomly. That's rather disconcerting. They asserted that the price fluctuations of stocks are random, and thus they were called random walkers. In my case, I focused on the good merits of all 3 techniques. I took news about a particular business into consideration and made predictions, based on the stock prices fluctuations, but even then it was hard to say what would happen to the stock price, so in the end I would rely on intuition before trading. At first it was amazingly efficient, and even I wondered if I wasn't some kind of genius. Certainly there had been times where, despite my confidence, I had purchased stocks that had dropped in value and, thinking it was a bad situation, had relinquished them only to watch them skyrocket in value afterwards. Overall, I had done well, but even though I had faith in my trading methodology, losses started cropping up soon enough and my mind began to fill with doubt. Was what I was doing really the right way? Trying to take the good points of all three methods was meaningless, as it was really more about which one method of the three was the better choice. What bothered me and made me hesitant, in other words, was this. Thus, when I heard about Hagana's mathematical skills, I realized that there was the possibility of a fourth method of trading. Using mathematics to make predictions of the future was commonplace in physics. For example, if you were to go visit the service page of the orbital elevator, there was a prediction as to when and where the orbital elevator would collide with the garbage floating around Earth. The time delay it would have on service and the danger level were then displayed. Estimates by the space station took into account pieces of garbage larger than the tip of your thumb. If there was the possibility of anything large colliding with it, it would be destroyed with a laser or caused to fall back to Earth. Up until now, there has not once been a major accident or error. It could be possible to perfectly predict the movement of tens of thousands of pieces of garbage, no larger than the size of your thumb, as it orbited the Earth at several kilometers per second. There would be no reason that such precise calculations could not also be used to predict the price fluctuations of stock. Those who believed in that theory were called quants, and there was apparently a smattering of them who held PhDs from Lunar University. If Hagana possessed that talent and was able to mimic the trading methods of quants. As I thought about that, I realized that it was practically a pipe dream. Even if Hagana were able to understand all of that, it was an entirely different thing for her to agree to help me. At this point, I had just finished spending the morning combing websites for tricks on how to do well in the virtual markets. The clock had just about hit noon when I remembered Lisa's orders. I grumbled to myself in annoyance, but I realized I was running on empty at the same time, and obediently headed into the living room, where I saw a wrapped-up sandwich sitting on the table. I should use the bathroom first. Poured the rest of the coffee from the coffee maker into my cup, tossed it in the microwave, and headed to the bathroom. 3 meals a day for 10 mools was rather cheap. I took a leak, then washed my hands. I grumbled to myself as I headed back into the living room, and there I stopped completely in my tracks. Somehow, at the same time, Hagana also came into the living room. We were both rather surprised by each other's appearance and looked away, pretending the other wasn't there. However, Hagana sat down at the table first while I just groaned. As expected, I wanted to be excused from sitting alone with Hagana while we quietly ate our sandwiches. For now, I took a detour over to the microwave and picked up the warm coffee cup. Hagana was quietly eating her sandwich nearby and didn't bother to even look up. I heard from Lisa that Hagana's overly pushy haggling at the clothing shop yesterday was her way of thanking me. If that were the case, then it was possible that I was being insensitive in what I said. But on top of not knowing about that, Hagana had kicked me squarely in the shin. Rather than it being a favor to me, shouldn't Hagana apologize to me properly then? Oh, no, please don't go down this road, no. That's what I thought, but judging from the silent Hagana's mood, I could sense her anger pretty clearly. Was I so wrong? I wanted to ask her. I guess Hagana might just be more of a princess type after all. I shrugged my shoulders as I sipped on my coffee, and I headed back to the table as I thought about taking the sandwich back to my room to eat. It was at that moment that I was aware of Lisa's computer, which sat in a random spot on top of the sink. A pinhole camera, the kind you use for video calls, was powered on and pointed directly at the table. She would go that far. In my mind, I was disgusted by this, but I honestly had to tip my hat to her for going to that length. Besides, if I took a deep breath and thought about it, though we were all living together under one roof, thinking about how long I'd have to stay here did depress me. In such a confined space, whether it was the toilet or the bath, chances are I'd run into her rather often. It was annoying to think there would be an awkward silence between us each time. I didn't think I had done anything wrong. Hagana was wrong, if anything. Nevertheless, I was determined that this was where I should show my sincerity as a man. Coffee cup in hand, I returned to the table. I figured sitting directly diagonally from Hagana's chair would be the farthest point from her. The sandwiches were placed carefully on a plate in the center of the table. Excuse me. I took one of them and started chewing on it. Hold on. Excuse me. It appeared to be handmade by Lisa. At least the ingredients were certainly very grown up. There was tuna with leafy greens and peas, and there was lean meat in between. It seemed that she took into consideration my mentioning how strong the flavor was. The mostly mustard flavoring was kept to a more reasonable amount. While Hagana's small mouth was halfway done eating her sandwich, I had already devoured my first. I licked my fingers and took a sip of coffee before reaching for a second. It was then that I spoke to Hagana. "You're fine without anything to drink?" I thought I had chosen something harmless to say, but Hagana did not look up at all. "Want me to make you some coffee?" I spoke out to her again, but I didn't get even the slightest reaction out of Hagana. Her disregard for me was almost refreshing, in a way. Despite my attempts to meet her halfway and compromise, it didn't appear that she wanted to concede anything. While I wondered why I couldn't get out of this gridlock, I decided that since I'd already tried to reach out to her, I might as well try again. "Hey." I changed the tone of my voice slightly, which caused Hagana to react. Though she was ignoring me, it wasn't as if her ears were closed too. Hagana stopped eating, and I took that time to speak. "I heard from Lisa in regards to what happened yesterday." Hagana did not respond, nor did she look up. "It was your way of thanking me, right?" Hagana did not reply, as expected. However, she did go back to eating her sandwich. On top of that, she was eating more quickly than before. How should I say this? I didn't know about that, and I spoke without thinking. Ah! That's not what I wanted to push. Come on, I wanted to read that. I then wondered how I ended up rambling like this, and I was fishing for words to break the deadlock. And at that moment, "Shut up," Hagana replied with a simple phrase. I was completely taken aback, and I stared at Hagana. Hagana stared at the table as if something bad about her was written on it. And then, after a short period of time, she started eating her sandwich again. And this time, she was going even faster than before. It was clear that she was angry. No, wait a sec. While I was left dumbfounded, it was as if I felt some sort of major premonition. I'd lose my cool in the next few moments, I thought to myself, as if it were some sort of weather forecast. If nothing else, Hagana's actions were uncalled for. I don't get it.
"I said shut up."
What? Wham! I could feel the hairs on my temples standing on end. Huh? Why do you say that anyway? You are the one who kicked me without reason, and I'm already in a worse position. So what is with that? Hagana did not look up. Surprisingly, the hand that held up her sandwich stopped moving. I took a deep breath to hold back the impulse to toss the coffee cup in my hand, but the anger in me did not abate. I glared at Hagana and spoke. And back on that subject, it was you who was wrong for all that unreasonable haggling. According to what Lisa said, it was the result of Hagana being a bit too enthusiastic about doing it. But if there was no ill will, and all could be forgiven, then there would be no hardship in the world. But Hagana didn't say anything else. After finishing her sandwich, she stood up from her chair. And then she looked at me with anger and disdain and spoke.
You don't even work.
On hearing those words, for a brief moment I forgot about my anger and just replied with a question. Huh?
Did you steal money from your mommy before you ran away from home? Is that why you put on airs about having money?
Ooh. The malice in Hagana's words was way too clear. But those words were so unexpected that I couldn't stay angry.
You don't work, and you're on the computer every day, and who are you pretending to be by paying off that interest?
I was dumbfounded as I looked back at Hagana. I was not working?
We are doing all that we can to survive. We are different from someone like you who was born on the moon.
That was one thing I didn't want to hear from someone who came from Earth. Hagana fired off those words one after another.
Lisa is way too nice. I don't know why she would protect a punk like you.
And then, even though it looked like she still had something to say, it seemed like she was so overcome with emotion that the words didn't come out. Hagana looked pained as she knitted her brow, then suddenly turned away and left the table. Wait. I called out to her reflexively, but Hagana did not turn back. Just like that time at the clothing store, Hagana did not look back at all and left the living room. Before long, I could hear the door to her room close. Once again, I was left there, dumbfounded. But at least it wasn't like that time at the clothing store when I had no idea what was going on. I remembered the look in Hagana's eyes when she said that I didn't work. That was the look that stuck out in my mind when I first came here. That was the source of Hagana's crabby attitude, it seemed. What was going on in her mind was that she came to the moon because she was bought, and that she also financially burdened the place she fled to after running away from home. On top of that, even with her mathematical ability which she used to teach children, she was probably dismayed that she couldn't help solve their fundamental problems. And that same Hagana, who saw me on the computer every day in the church, probably saw me as a punk kid who just played around all day after running away from home. I probably looked like an example of a lunar-born, lunar-raised idiot whose mind had gone slack from the low gravity. Knowing that now, how Hagana was acting didn't seem all that unreasonable. I wasn't really angry about anything at that point. That didn't quite settle the problem, though. For example, should I go to her room and knock on her door in order to tell her that it was all a misunderstanding? The fact that I was making a huge profit on the stock market and not actually playing around on the computer? Should I say that she shouldn't misunderstand me? And after I said that, Hagana would open her door, show understanding, and apologize. Of course, I didn't imagine that would be the case. I just figured it was impossible given Hagana's stance. With everything, it was a matter of timing. You couldn't undo what was already done. I've learned that many a time from trading stocks. I scratched my head and sighed. I realized that it didn't really matter whether Hagana liked or hated me, but it really wasn't a good feeling for her to have animosity towards me due to a misunderstanding. To say nothing of Hagana's supposed mathematical genius, which I couldn't use in this case. If that genius could be utilized, it would be a happy outcome for both myself and Hagana. However, until this misunderstanding was resolved, it would be difficult to get her assistance. I leaned back as my whole body felt exhausted from this, and then I turned towards the computer on top of the sink. I couldn't imagine that she was spying on all this from somewhere, but it's possible that she just left the power on and that nothing was being recorded. Thinking about Lisa's personality, it would be fitting for her to make such a mischievous threat. Even so, I looked at the camera and bit my lower lip. What should I do now? Naturally, there was no response from the computer. I sighed once more and looked up at the ceiling. And I think we're going to leave that there for this episode. We're going to have to find out just how he deals with this next time round. I hope he figures out a way to broach all this with Hagana and figure things out, because this makes more sense now that we've gotten her perspective on it. But now we need to fix it. But not until next episode. Thank you all for joining me. As always, hit that subscribe button. Check out all the other game series that we're doing at the moment. And until next time, go be creative.